So good morning, everybody. Welcome. I am Andy Rich. I'm the Dean of the Colin Powell School here at City College. We are the School of Social Sciences, and we are home to the leadership development and the public service programs of City College. We are a place with 4,000 students, the largest student division of the college out of 15,000 that go to City College. Our mission is to transform the world's most diverse student population into tomorrow's global leaders. And that is a mission. That's a mission that came to us directly from General Colin Powell. General Colin Powell is a 1958 graduate of City College. He grew up in the South Bronx, and when it was time for college, it was City College or nowhere. I think a lot of the students in the audience can identify with that idea. And he came here, and here he found his passions. It wasn't studying necessarily, but it was ROTC. He found the military, and he went on, as I think everybody knows, to greatness. He was a trailblazer. He was the first Black American to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest military position in the country. He was the first Black American to be the U.S. Secretary of State, the chief diplomat for this country. But he never forgot about City College. And when he finished his service in government, he came back to this place, back about almost 20 years ago now, and he asked to meet with a group of students. And when he did, he saw himself. He said, my God, you're doing exactly what this place did when I was here, and these kids are me. And he recommitted himself on that day to this place. And his commitment never wavered for the remainder of his life. He was, of course, the namesake for the Colin Powell School, but he was even more our leader. And he was the chairman of our Board of Visitors and involved very much day to day, and a source of real inspiration for us. One of the things he liked to do was to introduce his friends to us, and even more, introduce us to his friends. And in the course of that, a few years back, we got to know Rick Goings. Rick Goings was, for 28 years, the chairman and CEO of the Tupperware Company, and he served as the chairman of the board of the Boys and Girls Club of America. And General Powell was on the board of Boys and Girls Club with Rick. And as happened with General Powell all the time, he didn't miss a chance to make sure Rick got to know about this place. And Rick and his wife Susan, whom you're going to meet in just a minute, became supporters of this place, devoted to this place. And about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, Rick and I started to have a deep conversation about how could we raise the visibility of this school, and how could we bring attention to the important work we're doing around leadership development. And we began to develop this idea for conversations in leadership. Fast forward a couple of months, and we lost General Powell. None of us expected it. It was less than a year ago now, October 2021. And the conversation with Rick and with Susan intensified about the opportunity to create a Conversations in Leadership series with some of the most distinguished and successful leaders across every sector, and have conversations with them about how did it happen? What was the early story of your life that might have been leading you in unpredictable ways to success at the very highest levels? And so today we launch Conversations in Leadership, and we couldn't be more thrilled to have Gayle King as our very first speaker, and to know going forward we have in the inaugural series Condoleezza Rice and Cesar Conde from NBC News. But I want to pause for a moment. I just want to thank Rick Goings and Susan Goings for their generosity and for their support. Thank you very much, and they're here with us today. Last thing I'll say as we start, this is our first Conversation in Leadership, but we actually did an event almost a year ago now that was the other source of inspiration for this series, and that was on September 30th, 2021, in what turned out to be really one of his very last, if not his last, public events. General Powell had a conversation with his daughter, Linda. And he talked about his childhood, growing up here, first born here in Harlem, grew up in the South Bronx, his path through childhood to City College, and from there, where he went on to greatness. He talked about what this place meant to him. And we had a couple of hundred people who joined us for that. It was by Zoom, because General Powell couldn't get to New York. But it was incredibly moving. And after his passing, thousands and thousands and thousands of people have watched that conversation. And Rick and Susan watched that conversation, and it was in many ways what gave us inspiration for this particular format. And I want to thank Linda Powell for having had that conversation with her dad. Linda's here. Linda's now the chair of our Board of Visitors, following in her dad's footsteps. And so, Linda, thank you very much. So, with that, thank you all for being here today. I want to introduce President of City College, Vince Boudreau, who, in addition to being President of City College, was the inaugural Dean of the Colin Powell School. Vince.
Thank you, Andy. About 2 weeks ago, we had our first in-person orientation in a number of years, and I took the opportunity of talking to new students to talk to them about imposter syndrome. It's something that we hear a lot in our work. It's the sense that so many of our students have, they carry around with them, that they don't really belong here, right? That maybe, especially first year you come in, maybe I was admitted to City College by mistake. People like me don't get a college education. Maybe people in my family don't get a college education. And one of the things that imposter syndrome does is it kind of lays in wait for you to hit that first stumbling block. Any of you that have been to a commencement hear speaker after speaker say, you pick yourself up and you keep going. Failure is an opportunity to recalibrate for success. If you carry imposter syndrome into that first stumbling block, there's a tendency to say, I knew it. Here it is, just what I feared. I say that today because, as Andy said, together, we had worked with General Powell really since the early 2000s, 2002, 2003, when the Colin Powell School was the Colin Powell Center. And from the very beginning, when he talked to students, the thing that he emphasized was that when he was where you are right now, talking to students, he had no idea where he was going to go. Right? Talks a lot, maybe too much, about how he struggled to graduate from City College. Right? And so he would say, if they didn't use my ROTC grades, which they weren't supposed to, for my GPA, I wouldn't have graduated. And he said it with a certain kind of pride because he liked being the kid from the Bronx who eventually made good. But he didn't hide the struggle. And so a lot of the times when he would bring people to talk to our students, part of what he was getting them to talk about was the fact that early on in their lives, they had no idea where they were going to go. He had no idea where he was going to go. And it's tempting to look at somebody at the end of their life and believe that from the beginning, a kind of light shone on them. They were always going to be Secretary of State, or they were always going to run a major corporation, or they were always going to be, an anchor in major broadcast news. But he knew, and he knew from his friends that that's not how it works. And so I know that in this room, there are some of you that wouldn't believe it if he were here to say, I was just like you. But part of what we do in these conversations of leadership is to make sure that you understand that the path is not straight. Over the years that we've done different iterations of conversation, I don't think I remember one successful person who came and said, I knew it from the beginning. Right? Path was straight, everything was laid out in front of me. Right? So this is the inauguration of this series is, first of all, absolutely a continuation of the wisdom and the vision of General Powell, what he wanted to impart to our students. It also gets to the heart of what we do in this college. This is college ranking seasons, and we just were named the third most successful college in the nation in terms of the economic outcomes of our students. Princeton, Stanford, City College, Harvard, down there, right? You don't get that, and you don't get the social mobility for which we are famous without bringing in generations of students whose path is not certain, and convincing them that it is a possibility, that you belong in this place alongside the memory of a General Powell, the memory of all the successful people that graduated. So listen for that in these talks. Rick, Susan, I can't thank you enough for this. I can't thank you enough for continuing the legacy of what General Powell bequeathed to us in these conversations with his friends. And if you're a student at City College, I know some of you are listening to me and thinking, he's talking about somebody else, but I'm not. I'm talking about you. So you may not eventually become a Gayle King or a Rick Goings or a Susan Goings. But the beauty of this place is you never know. So, Andy, thank you. We need this for you.
Vince, thank you very much. So listen, it's my honor to introduce the main event. We are thrilled to have Gayle King with us. She is someone in some ways who needs no introduction, and I won't be the one who gives the introduction. Susan will. But I will tell you that when Rick and Susan and Linda and others were sitting around brainstorming who would be the right person for us to start with, Gayle's name came to mind almost immediately. She, like General Powell, has been a trailblazer. She has had a kind of certainty of purpose in her life. She, like General Powell, has a humility and a kindness. And she herself has been a leader, an extraordinary successful one in her sector and her space. She's also interviewed leaders in every other sector and space, and we think probably has quite a perspective on what leadership is. So we're thrilled to have her today. I am thrilled that Susan Goings has agreed to moderate this. And here's the story on this. When I was talking to Rick initially about creating this series, he shared with me the link to a recording of an interview that Susan did with General Powell a couple of years ago. And it was incredibly moving. I got it actually just before we did the event last September with General Powell. And I thought, well, this is extraordinary. She did a great job of getting him to speak about things he might not otherwise always like to talk about. And when we then kind of fast forward, we're ready to launch the series, and I already had in the back of my mind, gosh, I wonder if Susan would do it. And I asked her, she said yes. She is someone who has been an advocate for women's empowerment in her career. She puts enormous energy and leadership into supporting at-risk youth. But earlier in her life, she was also a TV news anchor and a reporter out in Los Angeles. And you will see she knows exactly how to have a stimulating, engaging, and probing conversation. And so I'm thrilled that Susan and Rick are sponsoring this, are helping us to lead this series, but particularly thrilled that Susan's here to moderate today. So Susan, let me turn it over to you.
Good morning, and thank you for getting up early and coming to be with us. We really appreciate it. And President Boudreau, also known as Vince, thank you so much. And Dean Rich, we really appreciate, Rick and I are so grateful for you and organizing this and orchestrating this speaker series, and we're really honored, thank you. And Linda Powell, I never met Linda until this morning, but I knew a lot about her because her dad would tell me about her, including an interview I did with him for the a national conference for the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and he talked about Linda a lot. Linda is an actress, and he was so proud of her, and she's getting ready to open on Broadway in a play about Neil Diamond, so thank you. So we are very honored to have Gayle King as our very first guest. Gayle is the co-host of CBS's Morning Show, and she's also the editor-at-large of Oprah's Magazine, O, and she has won numerous awards, including 3 Emmys. Please welcome Gayle King.
All right. Hi, you guys. Thank you, Susan.
You can sit on this or not sit on this. The chairs are low. You decide.
Okay. Listen, I'm just flattered, guys, to be compared to Colin Powell in any way, shape, or form. That is no exaggeration. And bravo to you, Linda. I didn't know that about Broadway. So I'm dealing with an Achilles tendonitis, if anybody's ever had that. I've been dealing with it since June, and my physical therapist says, you know, you need to do more with your exercises. You need to be more diligent. Now, I don't know if any of you have been to physical therapy, but it's a pain in the butt. So I have to get better. And on the air, I wear the high heels, but when I'm out and about, I wear clogs. And somebody said to me, Gayle, why don't you just wear both clogs. I said, because I need my dignity. Because I love a pretty shoe. I love a pretty shoe. But I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, we are
I'm going to get rid of this.
really
'cause I'm
honored. Yeah.
5'10", so this is
Well,
kind
we
of-
thought about that, actually. We had
kind
that
of annoying.
discussion.
Yeah.
But the chairs are really low.
This is good.
So
This
we
is
figured
good.
you had long legs.
Yeah,
so,
I
okay,
do.
we,
This
we,
is
we
good.
literally had these conversations. So every single morning, Rick and I get up and we watch you. We just adore you. And having come from a news background, I'm pretty picky about who I like to watch, but I just love the way your demeanor, everything about you. And so we always choose to watch you. And sometimes when you're not on, we might flip the channel. But most...
Don't flip, Susan, don't flip. We still need viewers, don't flip. I still love this job so much.
Oh, you can tell.
I do, honest to God, I still do.
Yeah, you can
I still
just tell.
do.
Yeah. But despite the fact that there are millions of people watching you every day, our audience are in their early 20s.
Yeah,
They may
yeah.
not even own a TV. Hopefully they're watching you on YouTube or on the internet.
Yeah, chances are you all don't watch CBS Mornings, but hopefully after today, you'll at least tune in tomorrow at 7 just to see, what does she do? Who is she?
You make
At
news
least
fun.
try that, at least try that.
Yeah. So could you tell us a little bit about your background for those who may not be as familiar with you as I am?
Well, I got a big kick when you said, when Andy was saying, and Mr. President was saying, thank you all for getting up so early. So I was saying to my two best friends over there, so what is early? What time did you guys get up? So one of them said 8:30. 8:30? And then somebody else said, well, I got up at 6. 6? My alarm goes off every morning at 3:24. 3:24. And I have 3 snoozes because I need, I don't just jump out of bed. I need 3 snoozes, and then I bathe, and then the car picks me up. But today is our 1-year anniversary at CBS. I've been at CBS going on 11 years now, but we have a new anchor team, and today was our 1-year anniversary. So we had planned a live performance from a country music star, John Party. I love country music. I love country music.
He was fabulous.
John Party,
Yeah,
he's
he was
great. So he was coming in at 5:30, so we had to get there even an hour earlier today. So my alarm went off at 2-something this morning. So when I hear you guys say I had to get up early, I'm like, oh God, cry me a river.
So let that be your first clue of how to be successful. Get up early.
Well, yeah, I mean, I really think you have to decide, and success is not a one-size-fits-all. You have to figure out what works for you. But for me, I've been doing this since I was, I got my first on-air job when I was 22, 23. How old do you all think I am now? Careful. Careful. 45, 30. Oh, okay. Somebody got jokes. But I sit here before you guys, I'm 67. I'm 67. Because you know that old adage, black don't crack. Black people in the room know what I mean. No surgery. But I so love what I do. And why I sit here so amazed is Walter Cronkite, who's an icon in our business. Walter Cronkite, Susan, had to retire at 65. He had to retire at 60. He didn't have that option. Yeah. So I sit here at 67, still feeling so full of wonderment, still full of awe about this job, still feel that I have something to learn. We had the Target CEO on this morning, and one of the things he was announcing was he was just announced to be on the board, to lead the organization for another 3 years. Their cutoff is 65, and he's 63. He's not even 65, but they did a preemptive thing to say, we're going to ignore the 65 rule because of you. Mm-hmm. And so I keep saying, don't get hung up on numbers. I don't say age appropriate. I say person appropriate. Mm-hmm. That's what I say now.
But a lot of corporations are doing that. My husband was the chairman and CEO of Tupperware for 26 years and didn't retire until he was in his 70s.
Until he was in his 70s,
yeah.
Wow.
And, so a lot of them
and he was still lucid?
I met him. Even today, he was still lucid, yeah.
He's still lucid, still has all his teeth, can still communicate very well.
Well, they look like they were his, right? Yeah.
I mean, so I don't know how much longer I'll be doing this. I don't know that. But I do know that as long as I feel I have something to contribute, and as long as the audience wants me there, and more important, management wants you there, because it's their sandbox, they decide who plays, I intend to stay.
You mentioned Walter Cronkite. If you guys don't know who he is, look him up because
Yes, he was an icon in our business.
yeah, I mean, for me as a little kid, when I was 5 or 6 years old, I can still remember I would have a spoonful of peanut butter and I would sit and watch the news and eat that peanut butter for the 30 minutes that he was on. He was just fascinating
Yeah,
to
I mean,
me.
his tag-out line was, and that's the way it was, September, where are we, 8th, 2022. You know, I grew up in Turkey as a kid from 1st grade to 6th grade. And so my dad was an electronic engineer and we lived in a place called Ankara, Turkey. And so there was no TV. So I was a big book reader. I was a voracious reader. We'd go to the library. Back in the day, we had these things called library cards. And you'd get your library card and you'd check out your books. And so I was a big reader. When I came to the States, came back home to the States, I loved television. I still love television. And every night, we had to watch Walter Cronkite. My dad said, it's very important to know what's going on in the news. When I came back, I was in 7th grade. And Susan, I thought the news was boring. Who wants to watch the news? So it's so ironic to me. My dad died when I was in college, but it's so ironic to me that I sit here all these years later at CBS. For years, I was broadcasting under Walter Cronkite's map that I used to watch. Wow. My dad would have gotten such a kick out of that I'm sitting here at CBS.
I like to think that he is getting a kick
Yeah,
out of
I'd like
that.
to think that too.
Yeah,
I'd like to think that too.
I'm sure he's so proud of you. And
I hope so.
interesting the path that you took
I
since you
know,
weren't well. So
I
when
know.
did you decide you wanted to go into news then?
Well, I majored in psychology because I love listening to people's problems. And I love giving unsolicited advice, which I still do very well. That's my favorite daughter and favorite son. I'm very good at that.
She only has one of each, by the way.
Yeah, but I love listening to people's problems, so I thought I'd be a great psychologist, or I thought I'd be good as a lawyer in a courtroom, standing in front of a jury, arguing for whatever side I decided. I knew I didn't want to represent bad guys, but I thought I'd be great, you know, in a courtroom. But when I went to University of Maryland, and when my junior year, I was at I had a part-time job at a camera store, and the muckety-mucks used to come into the store, and one muckety-muck, I didn't know what anybody did. Back then, you used to take your film in from your camera, and it was developed. And so you would ask, do you want glossy or matte? Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah, and you had to wait
Glossy or
for
matte?
it. It would take a couple of days.
Yes,
yeah.
it would take a couple of days. If you wanted to pay extra, you could get it in an hour. And so he said, I would say, do you want glossy or matte with that? He said, you know, you have such a nice voice and you have such a nice personality. Have you ever thought television? I went, no. He goes, well, you know, I'm the so-and-so over at Channel 9, and we have an opening for a production assistant. It's an entry-level position. Would you be interested? And this is what I did that you should never do when someone is presenting you with a gift. The proper word is thank you, but instead I said, well, do I have to work weekends? And he goes, well, that's an interesting question. No, as a matter of fact, you don't. It's Monday through Friday, but you have to work nights. Would that be all right with you? Now, he's being sarcastic, but I'm like, well, no, I think I could do that. So I went in that newsroom, Susan, and there was breaking news, and I was like, whoa, this is so damn cool. Everybody was running around trying to get the news on the air. All the people who I'd seen on TV, like J.C. Hayward and Bruce Johnson and Gordon Peterson, all the anchors. And what you realize is we're just people, but when I saw him in person, I was like, wow. And I became hooked. So I ended up getting a job there, and then, you know, it's interesting what you can do on your resume with creative writing.
But you should never lie.
No, I never lied. I never lied. I always told the truth, but it was quite creative writing. And that took me from one job to another entry-level position to a writer/intern. Then I got a reporter training job that you put together a resume take, and then you're off to the races. And I have never looked back since then.
Can you remember an example of the creative writing on your resume?
Well, I said was responsible for the graphics and the chyrons. The chyrons are where you see
A person's name
a
or
person's name. Like
who
the
they are.
president of the United States is never chiron. That's the only person that isn't chiron in TV news. But everybody else, it would say General Colin Powell. He would be chiron. Everybody, Gayle King, Susan, we would all be chiron. The president is the only one you don't chiron. So I would say I was responsible for that. I was responsible for.
Were you?
Yeah, I was.
Oh, you were actually responsible for those things.
I
Okay.
was. And I was responsible for, I didn't say putting the scripts together. I had a big collating the scripts, instead of just saying, tearing the scripts and passing them out to the anchors. I would say collating the scripts, stuff like that. So I never lied about what I did, but it was just, I put a very positive light on what was a very entry-level job.
Did you
And
ever-
I also say this, guys, whenever you can get a face-to-face interview, now it's harder because everything is done digitally. I would do whatever it took to get a face-to-face interview, because I always believe bet on yourself. And I think if somebody can see you face-to-face, see your facial expression, see your body language, see your interest and your enthusiasm, that makes a difference. Otherwise, you're just another name on a piece of paper.
Right. As you're saying that, what popped into my head was your recent interview with R. Kelly.
Yeah.
Did any of y'all see that?
Yeah.
It was, I would have been afraid. Were you afraid?
I was not afraid. He went from 0 to 200 in a nanosecond. R. Kelly, as you know, is a very famous singer. It pains me because R. Kelly's song, "I Believe I Can Fly," is one of my favorite songs, and now I just can't listen to it. But he's been accused of sexual assault with young girls in particular. He's recently been found guilty and is now on trial in Chicago. But at the time, there had been a documentary called Surviving R. Kelly, and all of these women had come forward and were talking about it. So he, of course, denies it. And this was the first time that he was giving an interview after that documentary aired. So he knew we were going to go there. He knew that. It wasn't, I don't believe in gotcha interviews. I think even if you're talking about something that's uncomfortable, I believe that there's a time and a place to ask any question. If you're respectful, if your tone is right, if you have the right time frame. So I don't shy away from difficult questions. I just think there's a time and place for everything. So it's not like he didn't know we were going to talk about that.
And you were very respectful.
No, and I
that's-
was just asking him
Yeah.
about it. Of course, he denied it, but he got so angry. He stood out, got out of his chair, and he was hitting, "You all are fucking with my life, blah, 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 blah." And he was just, spittle just went everywhere. And one of them landed on my lip right here. And I just thought, this was before COVID, but still. But still, whenever you're talking to somebody and they spit on you, you do kind of go, your natural inclination is to go like that. Well, I had seen interviews with him, and I knew that if he gets upset, he gets up and storms off. So I just thought, if I just sit here, just quietly, and I looked at him, looked at his empty chair, looked at him, looked at his empty chair.
You kept saying his name, Richard. You kept-
Robert.
Oh,
I said,
Robert.
Robert.
Yeah.
Because I wanted him to know I wasn't going anywhere. Whatever this is you got going on over here, I'm not going anywhere because we still have many things to talk about. And he could tell I wasn't trying to trap him anyway, but I think he just got so triggered by it and was really, really upset. But I was worried that he could accidentally, the way he was hitting his own fist, I was worried that he could accidentally hit me. But I knew that if I made any sudden moves, that's why I just sat there when the little spittle came on my lip. I just sat there.
Is that the most difficult interview you've ever had?
No, I didn't really consider that so difficult. When you're in it, I didn't even see it like that. It's only when I got off the air and I called CBS, they said, "Oh, Gail, we're running this tonight." I go, "What do you mean?" "No, we're holding it for tomorrow for the show." They go, "Oh, no, we're running this tonight." Because they had been watching it from
Live, yeah.
They had been watching it in real time live,
Yeah.
which I didn't know they were doing, but they were watching it in real time. But no, I wasn't afraid. And this is the crazy part, Susan. I called the next day to check on him because it did turn into a thing.
You called to check on him?
Yes, I called to check on him.
See,
because
this is why
just-
she's so sweet. This is why you want to watch her.
No, I called to
Because
check on
that's
him
so
because
nice.
I really thought people said, "Oh, he was just putting on an act." That was not an act to me. I thought he was legitimately having a breakdown. So I did call to check on him. His team said he actually wants to thank you because you gave him a platform where people could see his passion and his pain. And I said, "Wow, is that how we saw that?" Like, okay, all right. But it's interesting. But in that moment, I didn't think of it like that. The most difficult interview I had, it was years ago. I was a baby cub reporter, and his name was Frank Zappa. Anybody remember Frank Zappa? He's a well-known musician. And Frank Zappa has children. Their names are Moon Unit and Dweezil, which, by the by, I'd never heard somebody named Moon Unit or Dweezil, and still have not. So I was interviewing him and I said, Moon Unit and Dweezil, you know, those are very unusual names. Is there a story behind it? And he goes, no, they're just names like Gail. Do you have any better questions? Now, I was a baby reporter, so I was like, to myself. And I went, no, I was just wondering. So I think he was in a bad mood that day, because later on I saw an interview. It's not like that was a stupid question or unusual question, in my humble opinion. Later I saw, and he had a whole big story about where the names came from. For whatever reason, he just didn't feel like it that day.
Well,
But that was tough.
I'm thinking the two, for me, that come, Jerry Lee Lewis, I interviewed him, and also Senator Ted Kennedy.
Great ball of fire, yeah.
Well, but both, I think, were impaired in some way, and angry and difficult. And so when I watched you with R.
So you
Kelly.
had Ted Kennedy, wow.
Yeah, but he had, I think, a little bit. He
A
was
little
very,
libation,
yes.
yes.
A little libation. He was kind of angry, but I was also a young reporter, and you're just not
And
seasoned.
it can throw you, yes,
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
Now, if R. Kelly had happened to me earlier, I think I would have been totally thrown. I know I would have been totally thrown. That's why it's good to have experience, and it's good to get older so that you can handle all these situations. Now, I feel that even if everything is going, as my grandmother used to say, hell in a handbasket, where nothing is going right, the audience is okay as long as you say, you know what, this isn't going according to plan. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Right. Honesty is great.
Oh, it
and
really
they appreciate
is.
it. Yeah.
You know how I learned that? I was starting my career in Kansas City. I anchored the local news. That was my first on-air job, and I'm a weekend anchor and reporting 3 days a week.
Which is a huge deal.
It is a big. To
It's
be
a
an
big
anchor
deal,
is
yeah.
a huge deal. It is. Weekend anchor / reporter in our business, in the hierarchy, that is a very cool thing to do. So I was new on this job in Kansas City, and I'm signing off, da-da-da-da-da. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll all be black next weekend. I was trying to say we'll all be back next weekend. And I was so thrown by that. Race makes people very uncomfortable. They think, oh, you know, I'm never afraid of race, but
Do you think they were afraid they were all going to be black next week?
and I said, yeah, they kind of look like, but it wasn't about that. It's just that it was such a big gaffe. And I said, well, you know, I'll still be black. The rest of these guys will be back. That's what I said. And it came to me in a nanosecond. So that was a Saturday, Sunday night, and I come into work Monday. Keep in mind, I've only been on this job less than 6 months. And the news director, which is, you know, in newsroom hierarchy, is a big boss, general manager of the news director.
Yep.
The news director says, Gail, you know, could I see you a minute? I go, oh God, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. I know I'm gonna get it, or I may lose a job, or I may be demoted. He said, you know, I just wanted to talk to you about over the weekend. I go, I know. I'm so sorry, I don't even know where that came, da 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 da. You know, I start blah. And he said, no, I just want to say, I thought you handled that very well. I go, you did? I mean, I was so thrown. And that was the first realization to me that if you make a mistake, if you just carry on, that it's okay. Now, the truth is, there are a million mistakes you can make in television. You don't want to make all million of them. But we're all going to make, I don't care what you do, you're all going to make mistakes in your job. But when you own it and you just carry on, it's okay. And so that's why even today, I'm okay acknowledging, you know, in TV it's like, you know, act like everything is fine even when it's not. And I just think that's crazy because the audience can see clearly there are some issues there.
Right.
But that was the first time that happened to me that I thought, oh, wow.
But what a great lesson, and how nice of him to
was.
acknowledge
Yes,
how you
yes.
handled that so well.
Yes. I thought so too.
We're all here because of Colin Powell.
Yes.
How many times did you interview
Oh,
him?
I adored him. Linda, I adored your dad. I adored him so much. Number one, he was so frickin' cool, and he was so frickin' smart.
And funny.
And people,
Really funny.
you know, because you see him, he's all official, da-da-da-da-da, he's General Colin Powell, but he had such a great sense of humor. And he was on the show, and there was a song back in the day by Carly Rae Jepsen, I just met you, this is crazy, but here's my number. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
Call me maybe. And so I was talking to him backstage, and we were frickin' and fracking about something, and then I played with him on the air, and he played back. He said, call me maybe. I mean, but it was so out of character for people to see him that way. I mean, I didn't even think he was going to do it. I was just playing with him backstage, and then we got out there and we were still continuing the conversation. But it just showed me the humor of him and the intelligence of the man. And we were doing live too after the Smithsonian Museum opened in Washington, D.C. If you haven't been, it is worth a trip to Washington to see the African American Museum of History and Culture. So we're live outside, and we have security, but we're on the air live, and I hear this commotion where some wackadoodle was trying to get on camera and was charging the stage where we were, and security was able to detain him, but it was a very loud distraction. And General Powell didn't flinch. He didn't move. He just sat there. And so my heart started racing because I didn't know what this guy wanted. I didn't think he had a weapon, but I don't know. And security had detained him, and I said, weren't you scared? Were you going to do something? He goes, he wasn't getting up here, Gail. He goes, he didn't move. And it's not that he was frozen in fear. He was like, let me just see how this is going to play out before I need to intervene. But he just said, he wasn't getting up here. So no, I wasn't scared. But I just thought that was the coolest because my heart was racing. I started breaking out into a sweat, and it wasn't a hot flash, which I do have. It wasn't a hot flash, but he was just the epitome of cool and integrity and authenticity.
Yeah. But he also had the word general in front of his name, so he'd probably encountered similar experiences.
Oh,
right?
I know. He did say that, Lindy. He goes, do you think that was compared to what I've seen and what I know? No, that was nothing.
You think about the word leadership, and he certainly epitomized that, and certainly the most talked about general in our lifetime.
Yes. If you haven't read the book, guys, in this class, do yourself a favor and read his book. Yeah. Read his book. His life lessons, his leadership lessons, just where he came from as a boy, as a kid, and just always such an honorable person.
Right.
You always say you don't make them like that anymore, but it's very hard to find people that are the mold. When we got the news, we were on the air, I really did feel like I had been punched in the stomach. It's one of those things, you're going to lose people, but for me, it was so unexpected. And so it was sort of shocking, and I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach.
It kind of wasn't unexpected for us.
But for the outsiders looking in, it was.
Well, he had called Rick about 2 weeks before he passed, and just to check on us and see how we were doing, and things were getting a little bit better with COVID, and they thought maybe they could come visit us. Yeah. And they chatted about that, and he had his health issues, but he was doing great. Yeah. And
we knew he had
ironically,
health issues, and we had heard it was better.
Took him.
So, it's always when you hear the news about someone that you respect and admire. I felt the same when we just recently lost Olivia Newton-John, because I'd spent time with her. When you see these really kind, generous, true people, and then you see these other jerky people that are living a gazillion years.
Right.
I don't wish death on anyone. I don't wish death on anyone, but I do sometimes wonder. I just wonder, what is life's plan? They always say, God doesn't give you any more than you can handle. But sometimes I do wonder life's plan. We have a terrible, terrible story in the news today. I get deeply affected by these stories. The Memphis kindergarten teacher who's just jogging in her neighborhood like she always does. And, she's violently kidnapped off the streets, thrown into this car. And, they recently found her body. And I just think, what is the purpose of that? She's a kindergarten teacher. She's the mother of 2 young children. Just everybody that knew her said she's the joy of light, and the guy who is in custody has a terrible, terrible record.
And why was he allowed on the streets?
That is the question.
Problem.
Why is he on the streets? And it just makes me question, why does this happen?
How do you handle, you covered Sandy Hook.
Sandy Hook is also a story that stays with me, because I anchored the news in Connecticut for over 18 years before I came to New York. So I feel I still have a 203 number, which is a Connecticut area code. I still, I lived in Connecticut. My children were born and raised there. I got married there. I got divorced there. I got, all of my major life milestones happened in Connecticut. So I feel a great affinity to the state of Connecticut. And Sandy Hook was something that all of us with a beating heart felt very deeply.
How do you, you said you had, I mean, all of this affects you so personally. How do you deal with that?
Well, because you have to do tonal gymnastics in my job. You know, like this morning we had, it's our year anniversary, yay, 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 hooray for us. We're very excited about that. And then you go to the story about the teacher. It's all about your tone, but we are all human beings. And so it's not my job to give you my opinion or give you my emotion, but we're not robots. So it definitely gets to you. It gets to you. But I also know I have a job to do.
Right. So you say it's not my job to give you my opinion.
Yeah, which is difficult for me.
Well,
It's gotten me in trouble a couple of times because I just can't help it.
but
it's
that's
not
what we
my
were
job.
taught. We are supposed to present the
Yes,
facts and
yes.
the
The
data.
facts are
and-
nothing but the facts,
facts.
ma'am. Yes.
That's right.
That is true.
And let the audience make
Yes.
their own
And for the
conclusion.
most part, that's certainly what CBS does. And for the most part, that's what I do. But occasionally, you know, we wear these earpieces, guys, where they're saying, we don't have the tape.
Don't say it, Gail. Don't say it, Gail.
No, they don't say it, Gail. They go, careful. Gail, careful. Gail, careful. I mean, you know, it was very hard for me when George Floyd died. George Floyd was murdered, not died. When George Floyd was murdered, and it was like a 1-2 punch of sadness, because you had Christian Cooper, who's a bird watcher in Central Park, who's just bird watching friggin' birds, and you know, a white woman with her dog who wasn't in an area where she's supposed to be, calls the police on him.
Films him.
And films him and says, I'm being attacked by this black man. And then, you know, the police could have come and would have certainly, in most cases, we believed her word. I mean, and that's why, thank God, he did film it. So you had that episode, and then you had George Floyd. You know, I'm the mother of, I'm a black woman, cinnamon brown with a dollop of caramel, I like to say. I have a son who's 35, who is certainly a black man. And I just felt so pained by what is happening in this country. And so I did have a bit of a moment, in that moment, when I was reporting it. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that,
What do you
because I'm not a robot.
Well, but sometimes you just have to say something. But then there
You're not supposed to,
I know
though,
you're not
Susan,
supposed to.
as you know.
And you look at, especially cable news, and it's
Well,
all
cable's
opinion.
different.
It's-
Cable can say anything.
But you can't really pass yourself off as news and then make it opinion, I don't think. It irritates the heck out of me.
Well, it is opinion television, and you just have to know that going in. That's why I say to people, please do your own due diligence. I mean, I think if you just only watch one particular brand of television, you are skewed. You do get a skewed perspective.
And that's what's happening today.
Exactly what's happening, and that's why it's so frightening. That's why I think we're so divided, because the truth of the matter is we are more alike than we are different. It's just that the voices on the extreme are so loud, and they get the most attention. But you've got to do your own due diligence and do yourself, put in the work, and figure out and look at the facts.
But what do you think the
Because
role
sometimes I watch Fox News myself and I go, Jesus, what are they talking about? I mean, because it's so different from the facts that I know. I think sometimes MSNBC is extreme too. I mean, you have two extremes.
Yes.
And I think that it's very important to really do your own homework and look at more than one source.
Well, a lot
Unless it's CBS.
But
I'm very proud of what we do at CBS.
I tell
am.
my kids who get a lot of their news from Reddit and other
Yeah, they're not even watching TV. The kids aren't watching the news.
but I constantly say to them, the three networks to me still have the best,
Yeah.
like real news. That's not
I
opinion.
think so, but you know, young people would disagree. They get it online in many different places.
But there's no filter.
And I think that's good too, but there isn't any filter. So you have to be careful when there's no filter.
Yeah.
And people can just say stuff with no accountability.
What advice would you give to these kids? I mean, you've had such great wisdom already that you've shared with them. Is there anything, I mean, when you were in your early 20s, is there anything you wish somebody had said to you, some advice or guidance?
Well, I'm a big believer in, I find it very hard to take no for an answer if it's something I really believe in. I look at no, and backwards it spells on, and I look at that as game on.
I've never heard that before. That's great.
Yeah, Kendra Scott, who's a very famous jewelry designer, said that to me once, and I've never forgotten that. If you really believe in yourself, and LL Cool J has said, there's dreams do not have a deadline. You can't let somebody dictate to you when you really believe that you're meant to do something. Mm-hmm. And so I would never squash anybody's dreams. Listen, I wish I could sing, but I know I can't. So I'm very realistic about that. But I still love singing, and I still love music.
And singing with General Powell.
And singing with General
You guys have to
Powell.
pull that up. It's really, really cute.
I know, it is fun.
It is really
fun.
So how have you handled failure, assuming that you've had failures during your career?
Well, I had a show that was canceled. I had a show, it was called the Gayle King Show.
Very creative.
It was yes, I know. We thought long and hard about that title. It was called the Gayle King Show, and it was canceled. And, the theme song was, Gail's got something to talk about, something to talk about. Favorite son, Will, was 6 at the time. And he goes, Gail's got nothing to talk about, nothing. And I go, Will, Mommy doesn't need that right now. Mommy really liked that show. She doesn't need that. He's a little kid. He didn't know he was trying to be funny. So I think, look at failure, and it sounds cliche, but it's so true. Look at it as an opportunity. I sometimes think it's a little whisper of saying, try something else, change direction. You can learn a lot from failure. You can. But I don't let it deter me. And not everything is supposed to go according to plan. That's just not how life is.
Yeah, but you're a really positive person, so that
Well,
helps, right?
I do feel that. I do feel I'm not one to dwell on stuff that, oh, woe is me, what can I do? It doesn't mean I don't get down, but I just don't see any benefit in dwelling on it.
Do you wake up happy every morning, go to bed?
For the
happy
most
every night?
part, DVF, Diane von Furstenberg, you guys all know her with the wrap dress. She's very famous and very successful. And I was having lunch with her one day, and she said, Gail, don't you sometimes just look in the mirror and just say, I'm such a loser? And I go, actually, I don't. I mean, I can say I had a bad day, or that didn't go well, or I wish I hadn't done that. But I've never felt, oh, I'm such a loser. Knock on wood, I hope that never changes. Even when I've had really bad days and things haven't gone, I don't want to, because, your words have power. What you tell yourself and what you believe about yourself has a lot of power. So I would never say I'm a loser.
What about mentors? How important have mentors been in your life?
Well, local news, I'm very big on local news for people who are interested in this business. I think local news is such a good training ground. And I remember the people that helped me most, Pam Coulter, who's a WCBS reporter back in the day, J.C. Hayward. These are people who took the time to look at my scripts to encourage me. Bruce Johnson, for sure. When I was in this reporter training program, and I got my first job in Kansas City, and I had a big live shot, and my clothes hadn't come, and I called Bruce and say, oh my God, Bruce, this is so hard. I have an interview with the police chief, and my clothes aren't here, and I'm not sure what this story is about. And I thought he was gonna say, it'll be okay, you got this. He goes, oh, grow up, and hung up the phone. It's one of those things where you go, hello, hello? But that was a really big lesson.
Yep.
That was a really big lesson. Maya Angelou said to me, I'd called her once about something that was happening at CBS that was irritating. And I called her and she said, stop it. I go, I'm not done telling you the story. She goes, it doesn't matter, stop it. And I said, but you haven't heard the whole story. And she goes, what you need to do right now is say thank you. And I said, thank you, what am I saying thank you about? Thank you. She goes, whining is so unbecoming, it lets them know there's a victim in the neighborhood. And I have never forgotten that. I mean, so I get lessons like that. Whining is so unbecoming, it lets them know there's a victim in the neighborhood. And then the truth of the matter is nobody cares. They don't care about your problems or your issues, so you got to figure it out yourself. I remember the first time when I didn't get the reporter training job, because that was the second time I applied. I didn't get it the first time. And to be honest, I was very surprised. Are my Spanx showing? You're supposed to tell me that. I'm sitting on camera and they go, Gail, you're spanked. I could feel them.
Be careful, Carol.
Yes,
Be careful,
you're
Gail.
supposed to say something. But I didn't get the reporter training job the first time.
And why were you surprised you didn't get it?
Because I thought I was really good at it.
Why do you think you didn't get it?
Well, and the only reason, the other reason why I thought I had a leg up, I knew all the people who were doing the interviewing. I had worked with them. Susan, I'd worked with them in college. So they knew me, I had helped many of them, they were familiar with my work, and I just couldn't believe I didn't get it. And so I went into the news director's office, and he's sitting at his desk, and he has his feet on the table, on his desk. He's kicked back in his chair, and I walked in and I said, Mr. Snyder, I know, that they've chosen the candidates for the reporter training program, and I just don't understand why I wasn't selected. And he goes, never moved his posture, just sat there right there reading the paper with his feet up on. That means someone really isn't interested in you. By the way, if you come in and they just sit there and their feet are on the desk and he's reading the paper, he's like looking over his glasses at me like this. And he goes, you're right, because I said I thought I worked really hard here. I thought people liked the job I was doing. He said, all of that is right. You work really hard, you're very well liked, people think you do a good job. But you know what, Gail? Life ain't fair. Any other questions? And you go, no, thank you for your time. But I walked out of there and I went, oh, that was another wake-up call for me.
Did you move to another station? Did you apply elsewhere after that?
I did, and I did.
That's what I would have done.
I took my ass to Baltimore,
Bye,
yes.
yeah.
Because I could tell I wasn't gonna get it. But then I reapplied, after I'd been in Baltimore for a year, I reapplied and then I got it the second time.
And that guy was still there? He was still the boss?
Yeah, I think he was still there, yes. Yes, I think he was still there, yep. But when he said to me, life ain't fair, where do you go with that?
Right, yeah.
There's nowhere to go.
And that probably wasn't the first time he had said that to
No,
somebody.
I know. I mean, he never put down his paper, he just sat there. And I really had great respect. I was kind of scared of him because he was a news director, he was kind of rough, kind of tough.
They're all that way.
I know, I
Yeah,
got to know him
it's like
later
that.
and he was really a big teddy bear, but from where I was sitting in my position, he's like Mr. Snyder, and he was very tough. But that was also a wake-up call, that sometimes you can work really hard and do the right thing, and you still don't get it.
Right.
But you can't take it as that you're not worthy. Don't take it that you're not worthy.
It's
it just
difficult
means
to do that,
That
though.
well, yes, oh my God, it feels very personal at the time. I get it. But at the time, I thought, okay, that was a big wake-up call for me. That was a big wake-up call for me. We're all, you're going to have these bumps in life. It's called life.
Yeah.
It's called life.
In addition to mentors, which I hope everybody out here has a mentor, and if not, find one, because that's, I think, an incredible, no matter what you're hoping to make your career, find somebody that you can talk to about it. It's really important. But also, what about people that helped you, not necessarily giving you advice, but offered you an opportunity that you never thought that you would have? And is there anybody that comes to mind that?
Well, I mean, I've had that my whole life. I mean, just sitting here at CBS Mornings, which is our, we were CBS This Morning for the first 10 years
Yes.
that I was there.
Yes.
And now we're CBS Mornings because they had a regime change and all sorts of good stuff. But, I was very happy in the job that I was doing. And I get a call out of the blue where they said, we're reimagining CBS. Are you interested? And I said, well, who would I be anchoring with? And they said, well, we can't tell you that. We want to know if you're interested. Well, I can't say if I'm interested if I don't know, So it's not like I was looking for it. It came to me, So I look at that as a huge blessing.
Yes.
His name is Chris Lick, by the way. So look at Chris Lick's track record. He has done Morning Joe, success. He launched CBS Mornings, success. Because we were cooking with gas. We really, oh man, we were killing it then. And then he went to the Stephen Colbert Show, success. Now he's just been named president, global president at CNN. And so that's a very big job. And I know he's going to kill it there too. But I mean, you get unexpected blessings. You just don't ignore them.
He's known for coming in and making, not necessarily big changes, but well, maybe radical changes, and he's doing that right now at CNN.
Yeah, he is. He's
Yeah.
doing it. I mean, and there are things that he wants to do there, but what I admire about him is he's a truth teller. He never BS's, even if it's something you don't want to hear. but he also is open to hearing ideas. And that's a sign of a good leader. You know, a good leader, they have to call the shots because somebody has to be responsible. So it starts at the very top, but they also incorporate what other people are saying. But in the end, they make the call.
But a good leader can be a kindergarten teacher,
Yes,
or
yes.
the leader of a band, or
Yes,
you know,
yes.
lots of different things. So what do you think are, why do you think, I was going to ask you
I don't know if I, you know, I don't know. I don't see myself as a leader because I thought, I don't know if I could fire anybody. That would be very hard, because especially if you heard
You hire
they had
people
a
to do that for you.
baby,
Oh,
or
yeah.
they just bought a house, or they're, so that would be very, very difficult
Yeah,
for
I
me
don't think
to
I
do.
could
I've
either.
never fired anybody. Oh, I did fire a nanny, I take that back, who was stealing from me, so I thought that was, I think that's a fireable offense.
And you fired a husband.
But yes, I did fire a husband. He didn't believe in monogamy. Note to self, men, women in marriages prefer monogamy. Yes. We would appreciate that, men in the audience, or whoever your significant other is.
So this book is called Note to Self.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
And it's a compilation of inspiring stories that Gail
Yeah,
did.
that's a segment we
cute.
do on CBS Mornings, where you ask somebody to, you know, if you could tell, what would you tell your younger self? And so they asked me to curate it, and I curated it, and then, you know, wrote the forward. But everybody, people have great stories in that book.
They're really great stories,
Yeah, they
phenomenal
are.
stories. But I like, you tell a story in here about Wayne Viviano. Can you share that with the kids?
Is that Wayne Biasetti? See,
Viviano, want to read them?
God, well, his name is actually Wayne Biasetti.
Oh, so the name is wrong in there?
Wow.
All right, well, we found it.
That is something.
Because I actually Googled Wayne Viviano to see what he was doing these days.
No, his name is, and I actually, oh, you know what? I didn't want to use his real name.
Oh, okay. So now it's out there. Don't worry about
Oh,
it. Nobody
no.
will know.
That's right, because they asked me, and I go, we can't use, yes. But when I saw it, I went, no, that's not, no, because I didn't want
There's
to
a
use his
reason.
real name.
So shall we not tell the story then?
Don't tell anybody. No, when I was in grade school, when I was in Turkey, and we were studying about Abraham Lincoln, and he said, you know, if it wasn't for Abraham Lincoln, you'd be my slave. And I remember going to my mom saying, you know, he said I'd be his slave, and my mom said, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But I was very shaken by that. You know, when I was in Turkey, there were only 3 other little black kids in the class, me and 2 other girls. And so, you know, I never thought about race, but in that moment, you know, kids don't really know race. They have to be taught race. They have to be taught that. So, you know, I'm walking around, I didn't think anything about it, but when he said it, and kids started laughing, I thought, ooh, what is this about? And so that was my first encounter with that. You know, when favorite daughter Kirby and favorite son Will were in elementary school, you know, we were having Martin Luther King's birthday. They were having it off, and I was explaining to them, you know, that he was a man, a leader who believed, you know, that black people and white people, that the color of your skin doesn't matter, and that you can live in harmony. And they were calling it King Arthur's birthday. I go, no, his name is Martin Luther King. So I was explaining. And so they were saying, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, you know, black and white. And I said, what color do you think Daddy is? And they said, white. I go, ooh. Well, what color do you think I am? Black. Well, what color is Aunt Sharon? Well, she's white. Well, what color is Aunt Lay? I mean, I went, holy cow. They had no idea of color. And it just never occurred to me that they didn't see black and white.
Which is a beautiful thing.
It is, it is. But, you know, I don't think it's good to be, you know, I used to think, don't see color. I take that away. I don't feel that way, because I think it can minimize, because there are differences, and the differences are okay. I say be color brave. Be color brave. But it's okay to see color. That's all right. We are more alike than we are different, but there are some differences, and that's okay.
Yeah. You had to have been one
God,
of
I
the...
feel so bad about saying this guy's name. Wow.
We've all forgotten.
No, his name is Wayne Washington. Oh my God. Because I remember when we were doing this book, I said, you can't put his name in. Oh, look what you did, Susan.
It's all my fault.
Oh, man.
We'll give him a new name. Do you have any idea what happened to that
No,
yet?
I don't.
I wonder if he looks
And
at
now
you
I'm
and goes,
scared.
oh my God,
I wonder if
remember."
he even remembers me. You know, he probably doesn't. I mean, you know, I also have, you know, I have a couple of instances. You know, I'm not an athlete, despite what you thought when I walked in the room. When I glided in the room, we used to, when I was little, play a game called dodgeball. Anybody remember dodgeball?
Oh, I loved dodgeball.
I loved dodgeball.
Me too.
Oh, I loved it.
Because we could be good at it, even if we weren't
I
athletic.
could.
Yeah.
But I wasn't. But I loved that game. And so back in the day, you know, kids would pick teams. I'll take Susan, I'll take Linda, I'll take, you know. So it came down to me and somebody else. Never good when you're the last. And clear as day, I think it was Wayne, I heard somebody say, "We had Gail last time, now it's your turn."
Oh.
I know. I'm still scarred by that. And then people are like, "No, we had her last time," and everybody starts laughing.
Wait, despite that,
I've had some traumatic things now that I sit here and verbalize it.
but you've overcome them. I watched you the other night with
Yes.
Serena.
Oh my God, I love Serena. Oh
Okay,
God,
first
do
of
I
all,
love this woman.
What an honor to be selected to do that.
It
They could have
was,
picked anybody.
Susan,
and
it
they-
was such an honor.
Yeah.
Especially because it's on ESPN and ABC. But the tennis people called me, the network didn't. The tennis people called me, and I got a call about 2 weeks ago, and they said, you know, it's going to be tough at the US Open, but we want to honor Serena. So we think she's going to be opening night. We don't know yet, but we want you to do the half-court interview if she loses. If she loses, we want you to do that. And then they came back 2 days later and said, you know what? We want you to do it whether she wins or she loses, which I thought was a nice, better way, much better way. Because if she lost, it would be a, you know, thank you so much, Serena, celebration to your life. And if she wins, it's a thank you so much, Serena, please continue, we're rooting for you. So I thought that was a really nice way to do it. So I got so excited, number one, I was excited to do it, but I was so nervous for her because I wanted her to win so badly the first night. After that, anything was gravy because I knew the competition would be tough, but she's Serena, never count her out. So when she won the first night, I was ecstatic. And they told me I only had 3 minutes. Well, you can't talk to Serena Williams 3 minutes. After she won, and then she won Wednesday after the number 2 seat. So I went, oh my God, do I dare to dream? Do I dare to dream? What if she goes all the way? Because I saw Serena and Coco in the finals. And then I went Friday, and unfortunately she lost Friday. But God, Susan, she fought to the bitter end.
Do you like to play tennis?
I do. I'm not very good at it, but I love the game. But she fought to the bitter end. So I hope she's holding her head high.
Oh.
We're all so
yeah,
proud.
yeah.
All so proud. And I also predict this. I predict her second chapter, whatever that's going to be. She's already started a business thing. She wants to have another baby. You know, she'd share that. If you haven't read the Vogue article, please pick it up. It's great. She's on the cover of Vogue looking hot, hot, hot.
And that beautiful picture of her and her
Yeah,
daughter
you
with
open,
the,
and there's little
it's
Olympia
gorgeous,
when
yeah.
you open the fold. It's great.
Yeah.
I'm nuts about her.
She's extremely passionate about what she does. So I think whether it's her family or
Yeah, her
the
next chapter, I think,
yeah.
will be even bigger than what she's done on the tennis court.
What other celebrities have you thoroughly enjoyed interviewing or getting to know?
You know, it's not so much about the celebrities, because I really do like people, but I would say at the top of my list would be Michelle Obama. I adore her. You know, her book, Becoming, sold, listen to this, over 12 million copies. 12 million for a memoir. And what you realize about celebrities is that, honestly, they are just people. They have the same issues. I know it doesn't feel like it, but they have the same issues. They're going through the same trials and tribulations. It's just that so many more people know their name. And when you can cut through that, I think maybe that's one of the reasons why I like country music people so much. I think they're some of the nicest people on the planet. They're extremely authentic. They're great storytellers. And I never feel that they're putting on airs about things. They're, for the most part, singing their lives, and I like that.
Yeah, I love country music.
I'm a
I
big
grew up
fan.
with country music. I grew up in Florida, and my dad was a big
But
country
you know,
music fan.
what's interesting is that I like all music. My favorite son and I, he was living in China, and I lived in New York. And Jay-Z and Kanye were performing in Paris for the big album that they had. And so we rendezvoused in Paris just so we could see them. And it goes from, you know, when Will was 9, he was playing that gimme that stuff, that gushy stuff, say what? And I went in there and said, you can't listen to this. What is this? So cut to 20 years later, make some motherfucking noise. Where I like him too. I mean, he's another one of those really talented people that's not like anybody else in the class. So I'll go to a Jay-Z concert or a country music concert, and everybody always asks me the same thing. What are you doing here? I go, because I like the music. I go see Barry Manilow and play the game of Count the Black People in the audience. There were 5. But I love that song, Mandy. But I just like all different kinds of music. And, you know, I find it very healing and very unifying.
Yeah. I ask a lot of people when I knew that you were going to be our first guest, oh, is there anything you'd
Thank
like
you
me to
very
ask
much
her?
for having me as a first guest. I'm very flattered.
Well, we're honored.
I'm very flattered.
As
Yeah, Susan called me, and she had me at the words Colin Powell.
okay, what do you think almost every single person wanted me to ask you about?
My grandchild?
Yes, exactly, that's what it was. And how old is he now?
He's 11 months.
Oh, God. Oh, so I just have my first grandchild.
Oh, I
too, so
mean,
it's
oh
so
my
exciting.
God.
It's,
I'm going to try not to be that guy, but I am that guy.
oh, he's really cute.
No, what did they want to know about?
Of course, Oprah, right?
Yes.
But
Oprah who?
Oprah who? For me, I think about I mean, I have a best friend, and she's been my best friend for decades. And she's not well known, but her husband is well known. He's an actor. And but I think the only reason people are so fascinated with your friendship is because you're both well known, and you talk about it, and you share pictures.
I
of
know,
your
but I wasn't
vacations
always
and-
well known. I wasn't. So, you know, we've been friends since we were 21 and 22, and now we're 67 and 68. Yes, she's older. But, you know, we met at a station in Baltimore, and we found out that we have, I mean, this is so typical of her. There was a terrible storm, and I couldn't get home. I was making $12,500, and she was making $23,000. That was like, oh my God, that's so much money. I remember we were saying, I said, God, Oprah, can you imagine if you're 30 and you make $30,000 if you make your age? And if you're 50 and then you make $50,000? Well, she has certainly surpassed that. But we found out when I spent the night that night because of bad weather, it's so typical of her because the intern / production, I was a production assistant / writer then. So I'm here on the totem pole, she's anchor, she's here. And it's not like we knew each other well, it's just that we were both young Black women. And she said, well, why don't you stay at my house so you don't have to drive because the weather's really bad.
She was just being nice.
She was just being nice. That's so her. And I said, but I don't have any clothes. She goes, I have clothes. We were both size 10 then. And I said, I don't have underwear. She goes, I have underwear and it's clean. She said, but I draw the line at a toothbrush. So we'll stop at the drugstore and get you a toothbrush. You know, I've told that story before, and there was a headline in the tabloid, "The Day I Wore Oprah's Underwear." Of all the things that they could say, that was the story. But that night we found out, like, who do you think do you think those two are boinking? Or what do you think about so-and-so? Or, oh, I can't stand so-and-so.
Does it bother you?
Huh?
Does it bother you?
What?
When you read stuff like that or hear stuff like that?
No, I mean, I think it's kind of silly. You know, I used to think when I got a divorce and they said, oh, Oprah and Gayle are gay, it bothered me because I said, if we were gay, I would tell you. Neither one of us see anything wrong with it. But I would tell you, and I said to her, you better say something because it's hard enough to get a date on a Saturday night. You better say something. You've got to tell people. But now, I don't care. I, honest to God, don't care. You know, whatever you say is okay with me.
Well, I don't understand why other people care. I mean, you guys just have this beautiful friendship.
Because it's Oprah. Number one, listen, talk about not being like the other kids in the class. I just adore her. I trust her. You know, we are very deeply connected. And I think when other women who have a best friend like that totally get it. And so people say, oh, it must be so hard. And I go, hard what? Being her best friend? That ain't hard. Because I don't see myself as standing in her shadow. I see myself as standing in her light. Now, when we first started, I was in local news. So I always had a job. I've always had a job. And, you know, she became this, you know, international figure. But I've never thought, oh, my God, I wish that was me. Oh, I've never thought that because I've always been so happy in what I was doing and just thrilled for her success.
And it's always seemed like you've
Continued
supported
to
each
be.
other.
Oh, yes,
Constantly,
yes.
always
When I got the
supported.
job at CBS, she sent me a poster of Color Purple, which was her dream that she wanted. She wanted a role in Color Purple more than anything. And she had it framed and said, now's your Color Purple moment. Because I said, I didn't even dream this dream. And that's why she says, God can dream a bigger dream than you can dream for yourself. I have it hanging in my kitchen today.
That is a wonderful
I know,
gift.
isn't that nice?
That's a really
Yeah,
nice
she's
gift.
very thoughtful.
Gail and I have a mutual friend named Patty who lives in New Jersey.
Yes.
And I asked
Adore her, yes.
I know, she's awesome. I asked
Yes.
Patty, is there anything you want me to ask Gail? And she said, absolutely not. She said, but you're going to love her. She's the easiest person on earth to get along with. And
Well,
that's-
you know, I was always told in elementary school, Gayle King, dear Mr. and Mrs. King, Gail is a very bright child, but she talks a lot in class and tends to be disruptive. But I've always played nicely with others. I've always done that.
well,
Please let that continue.
yeah, and it shows, and that's why we love watching
Oh,
you.
thank you, thank
and
you.
I'm so proud of you.
Oh,
I mean,
thanks,
you
thanks.
have.
I still really love this. And for those of you who are sitting here who have no clue who I am, and I know there's a lot of you out there, I hope that you will at least turn on tomorrow and make wise decisions, whether you choose me or somebody else, that you'll choose wisely on where you get your news and information.
Or as you're walking out the door, turn on your phone and Google Gail King and watch some videos, because there are a lot of them out there. I think we're going to open up to some
Oh,
questions
okay,
from the kids,
okay.
if that's okay with you.
Yes,
You have
that's
some time?
okay.
Okay. I can't see because of the lights, so. Oh, over here. We're going to bring you a microphone. What's your name? Hi, Katie.
Hi, Katie.
I'm so thrilled to be able to talk to you. Me and my family watch you every morning
Oh,
since I was
yay.
12 years old.
Since you were 12?
Yes. So I'm
I
so
know.
happy to,
Yeah, 4 years ago, Katie? Yeah.
a little more than that. But the thing me and my family love most about you is your ability to be so vulnerable and basically say what everyone is secretly thinking on the air, but also maintain such journalistic integrity and be able to speak with people you may not necessarily agree with, which you've talked a little bit about today. And in the Colin Powell School, we discuss a lot how it's difficult to speak with people you disagree with and how to work with people you disagree with. So I think my question is, how do you do that, and what advice would you give to
I know. I
college
think
students?
that's such a
with-
good question, because it's really hard, especially when you think, A, they're not telling the truth, or that the concept is just so foreign. How do you think this way? And I think you just have to try to put yourself in their shoes and try to understand where they're coming from. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but I do want to try to get some insight into their thinking, because maybe that could help me understand it. Maybe that could help me understand it. But I agree, I struggle with that. When it just, like, I look at January 6th, guys, I sat at my kitchen table and I wanted to weep what I was seeing. And then to hear that described as just tourists that got out of control, or.
We love you.
Yeah, I mean, I look at that and it was heartbreaking to me, whether it was Trump or anybody, that people could attack the Capitol that way and climb the steps and beat police officers with their own weapons. It's just, you know, as a matter of fact, one of my dream interviews is Eugene Goodman, the Capitol police officer, who really sort of saved, I believe, he sort of de-escalated the situation because he led the rioters away. From the Capitol where many people were. And everybody was so amped up that day. I don't know what would have happened if they had actually found Vice President Pence. I don't know.
Right, and they were
Or
really
Nancy
close.
Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi was within
I don't
feet,
know.
right?
So that, to your question, Katie, that's hard, but I do try to really understand at least why they think the way they do. I'm not saying it changes my mind, but I always try to get some kind of insight.
Sometimes I watch you interview somebody and I think to myself, she's got to be thinking, how stupid are you? But you still have to put on a nice face. And
I would never say that.
I will not say it, but you got to be thinking it and then ask some reasonable question afterwards. Another question from the audience? Over here?
Hi, it's like everybody else. It's a pleasure to be able to see you today,
Oh,
especially
thank you.
since this is
What's
the
your name?
first. Oh, sorry, my name is Michaela Liu.
Michaela Lou?
My question is, how do you navigate being a Black woman in the workforce? Because it's like obviously not easy. So I was wondering if you have like any tips, like for, I don't know, just like helping.
Well, you know, years ago when I was starting and I was a baby reporter, I interviewed Reverend Jesse Jackson, and he said to me, he was asking me, you know, how long have you had this job? And I said, 3 weeks. And he said, well, he called everybody doctor so-and-so, doctor. He goes, well, Dr. King, be excellent, because excellence is the best deterrent to racism. And I've never, ever forgotten that. I've tried to always, you know, even with my own children, it's a shame, but I feel sometimes you have to go above and beyond the call of duty. When they were in school, if their assignment was, you have to find 3 letters, 3 things with the letter A, I'd say you have to do 5. And they said, why? Because you always want to go above and beyond. And I wanted to instill that in them at a very early age. That, you know, you can see, I've seen white guys fail, and they seem to fail up. And a Black guy makes a mistake, and it's like, oh, it's a lost cause. So I'm very mindful that still today exists. And I've just always thought, let me work hard, let me do the best job I can. And I don't walk around thinking about race, to be honest with you. I just think I want to make myself invaluable wherever I am. That's why when an intern comes in, and there are some that are just looking at the clock, how much longer do we have to be here? And there are others that come in and say, what can I do? How can I learn? I was that kind of kid. So that everybody knew my name, and in a good way. You don't want them to know your name in a bad way. You want them to know your name in a good way. So I just think, be excellent at what you do. But yeah, it's a fair question, because it is very much still alive.
But do you believe it's changing? Do you believe it's
I'd
getting
like
better?
to think it's changing, and I do think it's getting better, but we ain't there yet.
Right.
But yeah.
But when you started in the early 80s,
Yeah.
I mean, you
let's see,
had to
my
have been one
first
of the
job was in
first Black
76. You know,
reporters, right?
Yes.
Especially a female.
Especially female. And when I started, you know, when I got my job, after the reporter training thing, they put together a resume tape, and you had to send it out in hopes, this was before you had agents and stuff. I sat there with a map of the United States and the broadcast yearbook, which tells you all the markets in the country. And there are 212 markets. New York is the #1 market in the country.
Or sometimes LA.
LA's #2.
Well, but when I was there, it was #1.
Well, New York is #1, Susan. But it flips back and forth. Chicago's #3.
3, yeah. Always #3.
Yeah, Chicago's #3. There's no dispute between Chicago being 3. But 1 and 2 often flip back, but right now it's New York. And so I looked at the map, and I knew my mom lived in Maryland, and I said, I don't want to go too far away. So I would look, and the dividing line was Missouri, the state of Missouri. And I said, I think I could get a job in markets 20 to 30. I knew I couldn't get the top 10. I knew I couldn't even get the top 20, but I thought maybe 20 to 30, because I thought my resume tape was pretty good. So then I looked at the map of the United States and looked at the markets that had sports teams, because sports teams give a city energy. Even if it's a college team, it's not a sleepy town, it gives them energy.
How did you know to do that?
I don't know,
You were so young.
I know, I was just thinking. And so then I said, then I would get the number of the station, and I would find out who the news director is, and I'd find out who their assistant was. Because
That's really important.
Everything.
Always be nice to the assistant.
Always be nice to the
Be nice to
assistants.
everybody, but especially the assistant.
I'm nice to everybody, but really be nice to the assistants, because they know every damn thing, often before anybody else, because they see what their boss is writing, what they're thinking in the conversations. I would call the assistant, I'd say, hey, my name is Gayle King. I'm going to send a resume tape. I'm a young Black woman. This is my first job, and I'm wondering if you have any openings. Now, no one can tell you that we don't have openings for Black people, but I knew that if they had 1 or 2, they weren't going to hire another. So that's why I made a point of saying, I'm a young Black woman. Do you think I should send my tape to your place? And I'm asking you because I know your boss gets a lot of tapes. Where are you going? Oh, okay.
Okay, that's a good.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
Cute.
Was it something I said?
I have class.
So I knew if they had one or two that I wouldn't get a job. And so I said, so I'm asking, should I send the tape there? And if you don't think I should, so I asked without asking. And so some people would say, well, no, not right now. And others would say, well, yeah, send it to me. And I would send it to the assistant. And then the assistant could be the one that would put it in front of her boss. So I engaged in a lot of strategery. I tell you, I'm always a kind of kid who's always thinking, what can I do to make it better? What's the solution? When I was having favorite daughter Kirby, I'd never had a baby before. We had moved to a new part of town. I didn't know who the good OBGYNs were, so I pretended I was a nurse from California, and I would call the different OBGYNs, and I said, I'm a nurse at so-and-so hospital, and I know we all know the real deal. So who do you think is a good OBGYN? And these two names kept coming up over and over and over again. They were twins, Charles and Thomas Helm. Their names kept coming up. If you could get one of the Helm brothers, that's what I would do.
Were they in practice together?
They were in practice together. If you could get one of the Helms brothers, and I said, well, if I have to pick one, they go, no, they're both great. And I go, well, if you had to pick. And they go, well, if you're making, they just thought they were talking to a fellow nurse. So they were being very open. I got some nursing terminology and stuff. And their names kept coming up. So I called, it was Charles. Charles Helm is still my gynecologist to this day, and my son is 35. And Charles lives in Connecticut, and I'm in New York, and I still schlepped to Wallingford, Connecticut to see him. Because A, I so trust him, and, but the point is, there's always a method to me trying to get an answer about something.
And you don't have to go very often now, because you're probably not going to have another baby.
I'm probably not going to, no.
Probably not.
I'm not going to have another baby, Susan. If I do, that is a news story.
And, okay, I think, anybody, one last question?
One last question, and it goes
This young
to
lady
you.
right there. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Nicole. Such an honor to be in your presence.
Nicole.
I was wondering your perspective on how to deal with news deserts, especially since only 14% of public schools have some form of free expression programs.
I know.
And there's such a lack of media literacy taught in schools. So what's your perspective on how to deal with that?
I know, I think that's a very good question.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. Because, it's just a matter, you have to just keep advocating to change the situation. News deserts, food deserts, and quite often they're in minority communities. They are in minority communities. And it's only going to take the advocation, the people have to advocate for change here to make a difference. I look at what's happening in Jackson, Mississippi. That makes me so angry. My kids we lived in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is quite a very affluent suburb in Connecticut outside of New York, or Beverly Hills. That would not happen there. Those people would not be without water from July 29th. That just would not happen.
But there are other places around the United States. When I watched that story, there are Native American lands where they don't have any water.
Yeah.
The water gets brought
Yeah.
in by a truck every day.
Yep.
And there are other, you go to
So
Alaska, there's places.
disparities still exist in this country.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be, and we're the richest country. We say we're a superpower. I look at New York, I just think New York is looking very dirty these days.
That's what
Does
my
everybody
husband
have
said
to
the
go
other
to
day.
class?
Yeah, well, you know what? Let's let them go to class.
Well,
Thank
it sounds like we better stop, Susan. We're losing
Can we
the
all say
audience.
thank you to Gail?
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
You were wonderful. Thank you so
thank
much. I hope you all
Everybody's
take.
going to class.
Gail,
Well, I hope you'll watch Stephen Colbert tonight. It's our 1-year anniversary.
Are you going to be on?
Yeah, so me and Tony, Nate
love
Burleson,
both
my
of
other TV husband, has the Rona. And so but he says, I had the Rona, but he's still testing. So he can't come in yet. So hopefully he'll be back next week. But Stephen is having us on to celebrate the 1-year anniversary. So
I will be watching.
So I'll be there tonight.
Yeah, I will be watching, but I think you're right about New York. It is a little dirty
It's
right
getting
now.
dirty.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much.
Okay.
And I hope you will all join us next
Yes.
time.
Oh, who are you doing next
Condoleezza
time?
Rice.
Oh.
Yeah.
Condi's coming?
Yeah.
Gosh, guys, you're going to be in for a treat with Condoleezza Rice. She and Colin were very tight.
Yeah.
You're going to be in for a big treat with her.
Yeah.
She's a Stanford professor. She loves football. She wanted to be.
She's the first woman to join golf at,
Yes.
whatever that place is called.
Augusta.
Augusta, thank you.
And she, you know, there were rumors she wanted to be the NFL commissioner. She's terrific.
Yeah.
That would be
She
great
would be
fun.
kick-ass, wouldn't
When are
she?
you doing that?
November.
Oh, no. So you're
Gotta
doing
get my
something
knee
once a month?
Gotta get my knee replaced first. Anyway, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.